Welcome to DragginMath. Let's learn about solving equations. When people hear the word algebra, most immediately think about solving for x. There's more to it, but solving for x is a good start. This usually means converting a complicated question whose answer isn't obvious into a simpler question whose answer is obvious, where we know for certain the two questions have the same answer. These questions are in the form of an equation, which has two sides. The equal sign means the two sides have the same numerical value, even if they look different at the outset. Algebra is a set of tools that help us find the specific numbers that make the equation true. The thing about algebra that lets us solve for x is that you can always make the same change to both sides of an equation. This will change the shape of the equation, and it will change some of the terms in the equation, but both sides will still be equal after the change. Anything that was true about the equation before the change will still be true about the equation after the change. This is one of the most important discoveries in the history of thinking. DragginMath solves equations in two different modes. Clean solve, on or off, which you might think of as the fast way and the slow way. The slow way is helpful because it shows all the details, which might be easier to understand if you're just getting started with algebra. But the slow way is also more work. There are more steps, and you have to drag more math around on the screen. Once you understand the main idea of algebra and get some practice using it, you'll probably want to switch to the fast way. The fast way follows the same steps as the slow way, but it does some of the repetitive and less interesting steps for you as you move toward a solution. If your goal is to understand algebra, you still need to know what those less interesting steps are, what they mean, and how to do them. To solve equations the slow way in DragginMath, tap the button in the upper right corner of the screen. Then find the switch labeled Clean Solve and turn it off. Tap OK at the bottom to return to the main screen. Now tap the text field at the top of the screen to raise the screen keyboard. Solving for x involves finding a number we don't initially know. But the process still works in equations where we already know everything about them. Let's begin with one of these equations where we already know all the numbers. Don't forget to tap the return key when you finish typing. Now we can watch the process of algebra without having to think about what we don't know. First, double tap equals to evaluate everything and verify this equation is true the way we typed it. Yes, it is. Now tap undo so we can work with what was originally there. Put your fingertip on 4 and leave it there. See the red circle around your fingertip. The red circle means DragginMath knows you're touching that node in the operator tree. Now drag 4 up until it turns blue. That blue color is important. It tells DragginMath something about what you intend to do with the thing you're dragging. If it isn't blue when you lift your finger to drop it, DragginMath will either do nothing or else will do something you didn't intend. Drag and drop the 4 onto the equal sign. See that DragginMath has subtracted 4 from both sides of the equation. It chose to subtract because in the original equation, 4 was added, and addition and subtraction undo each other. Use the associative property to bring those 4's together under one operator. Drag one of the 4's past the other until it turns purple. Then lift your finger to drop. This is a special feature of DragginMath. Let's undo to watch it again. This move usually invokes the commutative property. But when you commute a subtraction of things that are equal, that cancels them instead, leaving a 0 in their place. Creating this 0 is the reason we added 4 to both sides. Now we can make the 0 go away by dragging it onto the addition operator. Because adding 0 to any number is the same as that number by itself. And if the original equation was true, then this new equation is also true. You can double tap equals to be sure. Tap undo until you get back to where we started. Last time, we dragged 4 onto equals. This time, drag and drop 3 onto equals. This subtracts 3 from both sides of the equation. We still want to cancel the 3's, but this time we have to use the commutative property before using the associative property. Now we can cancel and simplify. Double tap equals to be sure this new equation is true. We've seen this process work for addition. With one important change, it also works for subtraction. Drag and drop the 6 onto equals. This time, DragginMath chose to add 6 to both sides instead of subtracting. Once again, that's because addition and subtraction undo each other. Now, reassociate and cancel. Drag and drop 0 onto its parent operator to make the 0 go away. You can go back the other direction too. This also works for multiplication and division. Now we're creating 1 by canceling, and then making that 1 go away by dragging it onto the division operator. Remember, you can always double tap on white space to clean up your screen layout. This works for most other operators also, such as raise, root, and log. Of course, we don't do this so we can validate things we already know. We do it so we can solve for x, to find numbers we don't already know. Four is the only number that makes that equation true. Most people can look at that problem and just know the answer. But many problems aren't so easy. You can use this kind of do the same thing to both sides thinking to solve problems that are much more complicated, whose answers you can't just look at and know. Spend some time playing with this and getting to know it. But this is like cooking meals in your kitchen. Things get messy quickly. If you don't clean up after yourself after each step, your equation soon becomes too messy to work on. Once you really understand that it works and how it works, all that commuting and associating and canceling becomes tiresome. You already know it will work, and you already know the shape of the outcome. So go back to the options and turn Clean Solve on. Now, when you drag and drop something on equals, the cleanup work is done for you. This changes the way we think about this. Instead of do the same thing to both sides, it looks more like remove this operand and invert it on the other side. Fortunately, these two statements turn out to mean the same thing. So think about where you are in your algebraic journey. If you're just getting started, turning Clean Solve off can help you understand the basics. And there is no substitute for understanding. Even if you're already capable with algebra, take a look at slow mode in DragginMath. It's a good reminder of what basic algebra is really doing, and it can help you explain it to others. Once you're comfortable with this main idea of algebra, turn Clean Solve on. Now the cleanup work is done for you, and you can turn your attention to other things. Dragging onto equals is the way to solve equations in DragginMath. But there is one special case you need to know about. Usually, you'll drag an operand of an operator onto equals. We can do this with simple things like numbers and variables. We can also do it with more complicated things like other operators. When we do this, DragginMath uses the parent operator to decide how to invert the operand onto the other side. When you do algebra on paper, that's what you do too. But what if you drag something right next to the equal sign? It doesn't have a parent operator because it's connected to the equal sign itself. If we drag that onto equals, DragginMath doesn't know how to invert it to the other side. So in this one case, it has to ask you, do you want to subtract this from both sides, leaving 0 in its place? Or do you want to divide this into both sides, leaving 1 in its place? There are times when you'll have to make these choices to move toward a solution. But usually, when you see this dialogue, you need to stop and think if this is really what you want. Remember, this only happens when you drag something right next to the equal sign. Probably this was a mistake, and you really need to do something different. In that case, cancel the dialogue and think some more about what comes next. That's all for now.